I'm Nitan.
And I'm Adam.
And you're listening to Stories from the Eastern West, little-known stories from Central and Eastern Europe that changed our world.
So, today we're going to talk about alchemy.
Turning metal into gold, eternal life, the philosopher's stone.
Or so you might think. It turns out alchemy was a lot more different to what you might expect.
A mysterious character we came across was Sendivogius, and he helped us get to the bottom of the real secrets of alchemy, and even possibly the discovery of oxygen?
Coming up on Stories from the East and West.
Zlín, Praha, Warszawa, Madrid, London, Paris, New York, Casablanca.
Where you see a kind of totality of the human presence. Absolutely, absolutely. That is exactly
Tak jak my w życiu, nigdy do końca nie ma odpowiedzi i nie będzie. To jest takie...
Stories from the Eastern West.
Our story begins in Prague 400 years ago.
It's 1604, and we're at the court of Emperor Rudolf II. A famous alchemist known as Michael Sendivogius stands before a hushed crowd of people.
On a long table before him is a mundane slab of metal. With a solemn expression on his face and a glint in his eyes, he gets to work, trying to achieve the impossible.
Suddenly, suffocating fumes burst into the air, and a flame blinds the audience. Sendivogius emerges from a dense cloud. He raises into the air what appears to be a piece of gold.
The Holy Roman Emperor was in awe. He made Sendivogius his newest counselor and heaped all sorts of honors upon him.
Not only that, but to mark the historic transformation into gold, he ordered a statement to be inscribed on the wall of his castle.
Let anyone else try what Sendivogius of Poland has done.
So, is this just a fairy tale or actual history? Let's start from the beginning.
Firstly, you have to realize that not everybody got to appear, let alone perform, in front of the emperor. It wasn't easy for Sendivogius either.
He had apparently attended at least 3 different universities, sparking a passion for alchemy that could not be quenched.
And in 1594, he became a courtier of Emperor Rudolf II.
Emperor Rudolf II was a patron of the arts and the sciences.
That's Zbigniew Andrew Szydło, a Royal Society chemist and the author of a book about Sendivogius' work. He is a bit of a mad scientist himself, but for now, let's hear his thoughts on the emperor.
He probably was a slight nutter by today's standards, but it doesn't matter. He was one hell of a character, and he had also access to the finances, so he was able to sponsor the activities of art and science on a very, very large scale in his castle, and indeed learned people from all over Europe and from beyond used to come where he would employ them.
With Rudolf's support, Sendivogius could finance his alchemical research, and he steadily gained power in the court as well, becoming a counselor and a diplomatic envoy.
It turns out alchemists were in high demand and employed to do a lot more than just turning things into gold.
Indeed, many alchemists were used for diplomatic services or as spies when they were sent to other courts in Europe.
That was Rafał Prinke, a historian who's extensively researched alchemy and Sendivogius.
Prinke explained to us that alchemists could win over monarchs very easily by tantalizing them with the idea they could acquire the philosopher's stone, a substance believed to give boundless wealth and eternal life.
So all of these nobles and monarchs risked being spied on just so they could learn more about alchemy. The promise was just too tempting.
But, as you might know from history class, that wasn't quite how it worked. Producing a load of golden slabs wasn't easy, even for Sendivogius.
What he appeared to do was clearly transmuting a base metal such as lead into gold. Now, we know from the point of view of modern chemistry that definitely is impossible. So he was definitely taking a piss, so to speak. He was basically telling people a tall story.
Yes, the disenchanting truth is that on that night in Rudolf's court, he didn't actually turn metal into gold. But you already knew that, right?
Sendivogius was undoubtedly one hell of a character. It is quite clearly that what he did to this transmutation was a trick. That's obvious as daylight. But these tricks are not that difficult to produce. In fact, if you want me, I could do one for you as well. I've done some in front of other people, pretending I've made real gold when I haven't.
We have little or no idea as to what he actually did that day in 1604. According to Professor Prinke, he might have dipped the metal in an oil or gilded it in a thin layer of gold, but still, whatever he did, it was a trick.
Disappointed? Well...
As a matter of fact, becoming incredibly wealthy wasn't what attracted alchemists to their craft at all.
Because alchemy was actually a very profound philosophy. It wasn't the art of making gold. It was really a philosophy of nature in which the alchemist believed in eternal salvation.
They were looking for things much bigger than just worldly possessions.
There was a strong spiritual side to it, and they believed by praying that they could, and being deeply religious and spiritual, this would enable them to achieve the results of their experiments which they were looking for.
It turns out gold was merely a metaphor.
Gold was the most noble of the metals because gold was seen to last for thousands of years. People thought that by engrossing their spirits, their minds, they too could spiritually become like gold.
So, as it turns out, transmutation's real purpose was actually purification, spiritual refinement.
Gold was definitely seen as a spiritual aim.
Another of our guests, Mark Starvish, is the director at the Institute for Hermetic Studies in Pennsylvania. He says,
in terms of actual alchemy, it is fairly clear in the literature that the purpose of it is to create a better person, a better individual.
So you see, alchemists weren't a bunch of oddballs crazy about producing gold. They were thinkers, proto-scientists who devoted their lives to a deeper understanding of natural and supernatural phenomena. They were working to improve themselves and the world around them.
You have to remember that before alchemy, humanity would explain certain things saying that they were made out of fire or lightning or wind, etc. When alchemists came along, they created a bridge between the world of superstition and today's world of science.
And because legitimate research required time and money, they used their knowledge to win the favor of the people who could pay for it.
So the answer to the question, what did Sendivogius do in 1604 in the emperor's court, is something that pleased the emperor enough to promote him and keep giving him lots and lots of money.
That's a very, very sensible suggestion. So I think it is entirely possible that he was clearly a very good actor, what we call in English a piss artist. He was clearly good at doing things just for the hell of it and making money on stupid people. And in order that he could fund genuine research for himself and for the benefit of others. If you don't mind me saying so, I certainly would do the same thing if I had the market.
Calling Emperor Rudolf II stupid is maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the point.
However, Sendivogius, and apparently Shidwell too, were not alone. Many other alchemists wanted to get in on the action. In fact, even total fraudsters claimed to be alchemists and went around pretending to have knowledge of metal transmutation.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is exactly what was happening. And for that reason, the alchemy earned itself such a bad name, because there were in fact far more of these charlatans than there were of the real philosophers. It was a popular sport among people to try and fool gullible princes and nobles into making money.
But don't let all this make you think that Sendivogius was one of these charlatans.
Not at all. He published a ton of genuine research, but not looking for recognition, he published most of it anonymously.
In Treatise on the Philosopher's Stone, one of his most famous works, Sendivogius writes, "If you ask who I am, I am Cosmopolita.
I am Cosmopolita, citizen of the world. If you know me and wish to be good and honourable men, keep my name a secret. If you do not know me, forbear to inquire after my name, for I shall make public nothing more than appears in this writing. For I behold this world full of vanity, greed, cruelty, venality, and iniquity, and I rejoice in the prospect of the glorious life to come."
So Sendivogius didn't really care about royal prestige or the cheering masses. That was just his day job. He wanted to simply be a, quote, citizen of the world, to strive each day to become a better person. Sendivogius wasn't the only alchemist writing anonymously.
It was generally held as a sensible idea because alchemy was actually pretty dangerous. Sendivogius was even kidnapped at one point by a rival who wanted to learn his alchemical secrets.
There was a certain fear among the alchemists of the right type of information falling into the wrong people's hands. That was one issue.
Other than writing it anonymously, alchemists also wrote in code.
They kept their language difficult and confusing, so the information couldn't be accessed by just anybody.
During the Renaissance especially, they used a lot of enigmas, emblematic representations, allegories, metaphors. Quite surrealistic for us today and difficult to interpret.
It's why working on this episode was like navigating murky, uncharted waters, full of unknowns. Whenever we tried to pin down our interviewees and get some definite answers, they'd come up with hypotheses instead.
Sendivogius' texts are no different. His writing can be confusing and is super vague in discussing his research and experimental process. However, in his treatise on the Philosopher's Stone, he does write about something that sounds pretty amazing.
Man was created of the earth, and lives by virtue of the air. For there is in the air a secret food of life, which in the night we call dew, and in the day rarefied water, whose invisible congealed spirit is better than the whole earth.
A secret substance in air? A food of life, allowing humans to live? Sound familiar?
That sounds a lot like oxygen.
Yes, and there's this theory that Sendivogius contributed vastly to the discovery and understanding of the properties of oxygen.
Before the 19th century, there was no notion of chemical elements, so you cannot discover something which is not defined, so to say.
So Sendivogius did not have the theoretical concepts at his disposal to say, hey folks, I've made oxygen. But he, within the framework of what he did have, he did make a startling discovery.
Being the mysterious enigma he was, Sendivogius didn't write down exactly how he came to this discovery, but Szydło has an idea of what Sendivogius might have done.
Undoubtedly, Sendivogius, being hugely intelligent, would have been interested in all natural phenomena. So he would have been interested in the movement of the stars, the planets, and what we today would define as physics, biology, any kind of phenomena he would have been interested in. And fire.
So, fire is the key word here. Szydło says Sendivogius would have used fire in many of his experiments. He might have taken potassium nitrate, a compound well known in Europe because of its use in gunpowder, and heated it up. After applying extreme heat to the niter, it bubbled.
And if he held a piece of burning wood to this bubbling niter, he might have noticed the fire getting brighter.
Sendivogius would have noticed that this type of air made things burn better. Now, that would definitely have sparked off his interest in nitre. And the reason why it made things burn better was because, and it made burn better, that fitted in with the philosophy of rising to perfection, because something was happening better. He was ameliorating the combustion process.
Sendivogius wrote a ton about nitre and claimed that within it was a part of the air essential to life, what he called a water which does not wet hands. He shifted his focus from gold to this mysterious substance, which we now know is oxygen.
And because for hundreds of years they've been trying to make gold, they got nowhere. And here was a substance which was actually delivering, at least partially, the alchemical ideal. Something that could make you live longer. Something that could make plants live longer. Humans live longer. Flames burn brighter.
The idea of oxygen fits in perfectly with the spiritual and philosophical side of alchemy. But as we now know, it's also a hugely important element in modern chemistry. Sendivogius' writings and research tied these two together nicely.
He certainly inspired later chemists of the 17th and 18th centuries who researched the topic, and eventually in the 18th century the oxygen was discovered by Lavoisier.
So yes, Sendivogius was a big deal. His work undeniably had a ton of influence.
But generally speaking, we just don't learn about alchemists in our history classes, let alone in chemistry. Sendivogius' legacy is complicated.
You see, many of the images of Sendivogius that appear in popular culture depict him as, well, a crazy person.
In one novel from the Romantic era, Sendivogius goes insane. In a Polish movie about him from 1988, it ends with him flying off in a UFO.
It seems that as modern science has grown in influence, alchemy has been taken less and less seriously, even though the two actually overlap.
What's interesting about the alchemical philosophy is that today we still have very much the same goals. Today we're still looking for medicines, cures for all sorts of diseases. We're still trying to work out the origins of life, to discover how life originated on this planet. We are still continuing to seek ways of perfecting the world we live in, and indeed ourselves. But the framework, the theoretical framework, has changed very, very dramatically. And that has been caused by what we call the revolution in science, which is based on you only believe what you see.
Science has become 100% materialistic since the beginning of the 18th century. The spiritual aspect of nature is simply no longer a part of it.
But despite this, alchemy is alive and well. Starvish says it hasn't changed much.
So different. There's always someone who thinks it's foolish. There's always someone who is trying to do something foolish with it. There's always someone who's achieving something wonderful. And there's always someone trying to find a way to exploit it. It doesn't change. Alchemy can't change. All that changes is the environment in which it's practiced in and the individual that practices it.
In fact, listening to Starvish, it sounds like we're in a golden age of alchemy right now.
I mean, think about it. Right now, the average individual can practice alchemy fairly inexpensively. It still takes a fair deal of money to do it, but compared to that time, you needed royal patronage or support, or you needed to be in a lodge where other people were working it, because it was simply very expensive to keep a lab together. You don't have that now. You have most people are working on their own. They're sharing at conferences, open conferences. They're sharing on Facebook, on YouTube. Now, not all of it's good. It's just like it was in the 16th, 15th, 16th century. There's a lot of crap out there and a lot of nonsense, but there's a lot of really good people too. So if you wanted to practice alchemy, now is probably the best of all times.
Just as it did through the days of ancient Egypt to the days of the European Renaissance, alchemy has continued to persist.
Now they're what we'd call the margin of society, and but I have every respect for anyone who tries to discover any kind of knowledge, and I'm very with great openness. I read anything that people write or do in any kind of field which pursues a genuine research and interest in natural phenomena. To this day there are many phenomena totally unexplained by modern science.
Who knows? Maybe the next major scientific discovery will come from the laboratory of an alchemist.
This episode of Stories from the East and West was brought to you by Culture.pl and hosted by Nitzan Reisner and me, Adam Żuławski.
It was written and produced by Elizabeth Lawrence and Wojciech Oleksiak. The story was researched by Monika Proba, edited by Adam Żuławski, and scored by Wojciech Oleksiak.
Many thanks to Zbigniew Andrew Szydło, who not only inspired us to pick up the story, but also gave us a thrilling lecture on everything alchemical. Plus he took me for fish and chips afterwards.
We'd also like to thank our guests Mark Stavish and Rafał Prynka. If you want to learn more about them, go to SFTEW.com. We'll also do our best to post instructions on how to turn anything into gold, so it might be worth checking out.
And big thanks to Stitcher for featuring this episode on their front page. It means a lot and we deeply appreciate it.
Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or email us at stories@culture.pl. We're actually looking for stories for the next season, so let us know if you think there's anything we should cover. And if you liked our show, Adam, what should our call to action be this time?
Call up your second cousin. Say, I'm sorry I haven't called you in a long time, but have you heard this show, Stories from the East and West?
You do that. And coming up in 2 weeks, how the Nazis searched high and low for a painting the size of a badminton court. Stay tuned. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.